Hello, everybody, for this virtual workshop with Herbert Lauenroth. The title Lockdown, Close Up, Speak Out, Reshaping the Christian Experience in the Time of Corona. I'm Father Gerold Jäger, brother and priest from the Shamanef community, University chaplain from Bonn in Germany, and for the moment, partaking in the festival weekend in the St. Paul's Abbey in Oosterhout in the Netherlands. With us, several members of the political fraternity of the Shamanef community and some participants of the festival in Oosterhout. I would ask you to present yourself with and then I will present Herbert Lauenroth. Ori, perhaps you want to start?
Hello everyone, my name is Bori. I'm Hungarian American and I am now back in Hungary and excited to participate in this new form of the festival and excited to listen to this workshop as well.
Hello everyone, I'm Paul. I'm part of the political fraternity since 3 years. And I've been living in Germany for 1.5 years, and now I'm back in France and working as a consultant in data. So I'm a pleasure to hear and learn new things here during this digital workshop.
Thank you. And I ask also here the 3 young people with me.
I'm Tobias. I'm living in Switzerland and study there Reformed theology.
Hello, I'm Merle. I live in Germany and I study psychology and theology.
Hello, I'm Armel. I'm from Burkina Faso and I live in the south of Germany in Ingolstadt. And I work as a geotechnical engineer.
Thank you very much. And with us also Father Emmanuel Panier and Dominique Faury, who are translating the workshop in French. We are greeting all the young people gathered in Madagascar, Burkina Faso, Mauritius, Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, Latvia, and also in the Lebanon. And all the brothers and sisters in the Lebanon, you're really in our prayers today. We are greeting also all those who are looking this video in the Holy Land, in Brazil, in Italy, Martinique, Spain, and Canada, and all those who will have a watch on YouTube all over the world. The basic idea of this festival, international festival weekend, is to empower us to become authors of change in this world in times of global crisis and to see what spiritual foundations we need for this. We are happy that Herbert Lauenroth accepted our invitation to go on in this reflection. Herbert, you're German, born in Göttingen. You made your studies as historian in Cologne, Salzburg, in Austria, in Florence, in Italy. The focus of your research is the post-secular age. You're co-director of the Ecumenical Life Center Ottmaring, near of Augsburg, and also external member of the ABBA School, an international center of the Focolare Movement for Cultural and Religious Studies in Rome. And you're a member of the steering committee of Together for Europe. To say 2 words about the program of our workshop now, Herbert, you will start with 20 or 25 minutes of your reflection about form and concision of Christian experience and testimony in these days of Corona. And after we will have an exchange with questions, but also with our own convictions and experiences. Herbert, it's up to you.
Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. I'm very curious where the Spirit we prayed to in the beginning will lead us to. We are in His hands, and it will be, I'm sure of that. He never failed in doing so. It will be a real surprising experience, disclosing new perspectives, new inspiration, and giving us that kind of empowerment we need to be, as you put it so well, agents of change. This is the most crucial thing we are called to be and to do. Now, my title has slightly changed. It runs as follows: Lockdown, connect, speak out, and by doing so, reshaping the Christian experience in the time of Corona. A satirical drawing and a dramatic photo prompted me to elaborate more on my personal reflections and experiences as a member of a Christian community, the Focula movement, in this time of COVID-19. Sheet 1. What our very topic could be all about is illustrated best by the satirical drawing by this satirical drawing of good and evil striving for the human soul in this time of the virus COVID-19, a time referred to by some philosophers and theologians as a metaphysical pandemic. The devil, triumphantly with a malicious delight, addressing God Father, with COVID-19, I closed your churches. To whom God calmly responds with a big smile, on the contrary, I just opened one in every home. Here it's all about having the last word, the last and best laugh. And once again, God's laughter and love is winning. Sheet 2. Could we go for it? Sheet 2. Gerold?
It's okay.
Yeah, but we need sheet 2.
Yeah.
I'm sorry for this interruption.
No problem.
Okay. I was literally struck, deeply moved by a photo, from me already now the photo of the year, showing Pope Francis in his solitude standing on a rainy evening in Rome, somehow lost on that vast and empty St. Peter's Square, a symbol of the church within the urban landscape, a scenery of complete abandon, a shepherd without his flock. How to read now these two depictions of our actual situation as ecclesial or Christian community around the world? I think there is a strong dynamics at work, a precarious yet prophetic transition taking place right now. A transition from the ecclesia to the ecclesiolae, as Pope John Paul II once put it. This means from the macro and metaphysics of St. Peter and all the other grandiose cathedrals to the microphysics, the spreading of little house communities and churches around the globe. From the sacred space to secular spots, places of everyday life. So maybe we are assisting to a certain trajectory, leading us from a crisis to a kairos, from an impasse to a new chance or opening, from a social or physical distancing to a new type of cohesion, of community and church building. Lockdown would appear in this very context, not just as a social obligation by the state, but as kind of a realignment with the inner self, as a monastic introspection, to put it with the American Bishop Robert Barron. Next sheet, please. Voila. Or in the words of French philosopher Blaise Pascal, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone. Exemplary figures like Thérèse de Lisieux, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the Vietnamese Cardinal Van Thuan, or even the poet and president of the Czech Republic, Václav Havel, a deep humanitarian spirit, were role models for this inner containment and had one experience in common. At the very heart of their inner confinement, their prison or monastic cell, they would witness the unfolding of an infinite dimension, a spiritual bond, a kinship across space and time. Connect, in this context, means the complementary aspect to the lockdown, the realignment with the other self, which is never immediate or non-mediated, but based in our media culture on an ethics of difference, described on a metaphysical level by Simone Weil as the essential feature of love. Aimer, c'est consentir à la distance, c'est adorer la distance entre soi et ce qu'on aime. Sheet 4, please. Co-immunity stands as a neologism for this double outreach towards oneself in the lockdown, and consequently towards the other, connect. Co-immunity thus discloses a new, a third kind of space in which the inner, domestic, and the outer, worldly space would merge into one another, so that multicultural and religious identities and perspectives could emerge and are respected in their absolute distinction. A striking passage from the works of the great Christian scholar and apologist Gilbert Keith Chesterton might help to clarify this matter. And I ask for sheet 5. Catholicism, or let's say Christianity in general, keeps its beliefs side by side like two strong colors, red and white. It has always had a healthy hatred of pink. What he meant was that Catholicism consistently celebrates the coming together of countries, not in the manner of a bland compromise, but rather in such a way that the full energy of the opposing elements remains in place. So this vibrant paradox must be read as a polemic counterstrike to our aseptic 50 Shades of Grey culture, with its ethical or aesthetical indifference or complete moral relativism. As a passionate option for a reloading, a refoundation of colorful differences, of a sensual perception, if I may be so about it, of a physical reality against any kind of evaporation or monoculture of colorization. Chesterton's animosity against pink or gray can be taken as the powerful and determined invitation to come back to the body issue. This way of looking at things requires a new body politics, because physicality in general and the body in all its literal and figural readings in at least Western history and culture is deeply affected right now. The individual, the social, and constantly overlooked, removed, forgotten, the mystical body. According to South African philosopher Achille Mbembe, the postmodern condition has now become the pandemic one. Because of this very reloading of the body, the need of its grounding in a realm of physicality, rejecting a dematerialized or deeply self-estranged postmodern culture, by this very leitmotif of the body and its proper promise of incarnation. Reloading or reshaping the body or the physical has been conceived as redemption of physical reality. I refer myself here to the title of a famous text from the 20s in the last century by film critic Siegfried Kracauer, a pivotal figure of modern cultural studies. Redemption of physical reality expresses the aspiration of a post-secular present to change or deconstruct the notorious narratives on the right and on the left. We come back to that. Based on disembodied, shivering grounds in the endless retelling and fabulations of crazy conspiracy theories and narcissistic tales of victimization. Sheet 6, please. Donnez-moi encore is the profound aspiration, the hidden subtext of all these narrations. And I found this phrase in a text signed by one of the most militant atheists of our time, French philosopher Gilles Deleuze. Donnez-moi encore means the somehow desperate longing for a belonging, the need for a body of evidence on the individual, social, and mystical level. Or to cut the long story short, this Donnez-moi encore is all about, as the French philosopher Georges Steiner has it, real presence, a term that has to be understood in its sacramental and phenomenological sense. This might have become too much of an abstraction, so I would like to share very briefly my personal experience with that real presence, disclosed by the Eucharist, living its communion in times of social distancing. I refer myself to the experience of celebrating the Mass in our house community in Otmering via Zoom with other groups and friends of our community. Please show us sheet 7. And let it please stay for a while. Sheet 7. Okay. The moment of the Eucharist was vitalized in all its very and acute brokenness, because the other friends assisting via Zoom could not participate in it. But my fellowmen and I felt that this sacrament was incredibly strengthened, corroborated, put to its maximum effect by giving new emphasis and meaning to all the other communions, meditating the scriptures, being more sensitive towards my housemates, but most importantly, because of our realignment with the Ursacrament, the foundation of all sacramentality, the promise of the Lord, according to Matthew chapter 80, verse 20, to be fully present where and whenever a community gathers in his name. So that very social as physical distancing caused a new intimacy between us, stronger than in any ordinary church or community meetings. we felt, so to speak, the body of Christ among us, articulating his real presence, newly to be felt in this intense moment of brokenness. We all were sharing, joining in. Strangely enough, I felt I was receiving the communion from my brothers and sisters who, for obvious reasons, were not able to do so. I felt that they were somehow mysteriously communicating with Jesus in me, in our midst. I felt on a rather mystical than theological, rational level what the Eucharist is all about. To be not only spiritually, but if one can say so, physically, one body in Christ, incorporated in him, he being present amongst us. And in that very moment, which taught me so many things, which made me appreciate in a way the corona-induced state of a Christian community as co-immunity, distinct, separated, but in the measure of this distinction, separation, close to one another, literally one. It was kind of a new initiation to my faith life. And secondly, I was reminded of the pastoral exhortation Pope Paul VI once gave on one of his pastoral visits to a Roman parish. The pontiff said, "Are we disposed right now, right here, to that transformation the Eucharist unleashes between us as a parish? And are we ready, disposed to join in individually, socially, spiritually?" The existential outcry we mentioned before, "Donnez-moi encore," is newly to be heard nowadays from Jesus himself, who often lives anonymous, unidentified, imprisoned or restricted, or even crucified on our religious interiority, not in the middle of our communities, but somehow marginalized among us, and who wants us to embody, incarnate his presence instead. These experiences with that unique kind of a real presence have to be traced back to Paul's collocation of Christ as the mediator, who is unlocking any lockdown by his very negotiating the middle between both sides, between the antagonistic forces. And the main passage I would like to quote is the famous lines, dense as they are in Paul's writing, taken from Ephesians chapter 2, verses 14 to 16. And I quote, "For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of his hostility, by setting aside in his flesh the law with its commands and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace, and in one body to reconcile both of them to God." Or we can step back to the Emmaus episode, according to Luke, in which Christ intervenes, literally, or interrupts the panic and anxiety-driven trajectory of the two disciples, fleeing in blind despair from Jerusalem. What is Christ doing here? He is retelling the story of salvation by connecting the most divergent narratives, and by doing so, he is reorientating, relocating these both time passengers completely lost in space and time on their way to nowhere, giving them back their presence between the recollection of the past and new visionary hopes for what is still to come. So when we finally testify to this experience of community on the way, or co-immunity, we have to stick to this very example of what I would refer to as Emmaus competence. And I would like to ask for sheet 8. Emmaus competence, meaning the negotiation of all the loose ends, the aporias, impasses, experiences of loss, trauma, and delusion, by making ends, even the end of history, meet, by you realigning them, redeeming all the narratives and open-end narrations into, recall Chesterton's intervention, a multicolored, multifaceted fabric. It is by retelling the Christian story, and it has to be retold by rediscovering or redeeming it from within, below the different layers of secular history and the many individual stories, that we make finally a difference. That we just do not start by just announcing, imposing a dogmatic or moralistic truth, but that we disclose this third space that emerges in the Emmaus narration, a space disclosed by the Emmaus competence, a space of vision, hope, reciprocity. So the testimony is up to the act of personal witnessing. Teaching comes in second place, and it all starts with listening. Resonating with the other story from within is of crucial importance. Coming back now to our actual concern, how does the church, the Christian community, succeed in its mission with regard to that falling apart of the public space, the project of the polis as the dimension of the politics is falling apart, fragmentizing and stuff like that? What does it mean right now? Only by not conforming ourselves to the existing opposing points of view, by not becoming involved neither with the mainstream nor with the most extreme antagonisms at the margins of society, we are to understand that very peaceful intervention, its permanent engagement to mediate, the tireless effort to reconnect, to unlock the different ideological and political, religious lockdowns in our culture, in order, by doing so, to preserve their respective identities. That means that we have to enter, maybe, that very combat zone of these so-called cultural wars raging right now, and that we must try to negotiate the parallel pathways, like the two disciples in the first part of the Emmaus episode, or the most militant narratives, which do not take in account any other position, but like to go to extremes instead. And I'd ask for sheet number 9. I think we have to position ourselves in between these antagonistic forces, between right and left. And I showed some of them. It's at random, it's a free choice. It's not exhausting, but it gives a first glimpse of what these constellation is all about. Nationalism, cosmopolitanism, foundational truth, cultural relativism, populism, political correctness, conspiracy theories, the so-called cancel culture, heterosexuality, and the culture of the LGBTQ community, the topos of white maleness, and the counter-culture of gender mainstreaming, all to be summed up in a conflict of reading what identity or diversity is all about. Speak out, make a difference, means, with regard to this kind of combat zone, the attempt to counterbalance a detached, abstract, anonymous, freewheeling hate speech by embodying, testifying to our own narrative, by avoiding the fatal anonymity, the mask or avatars, exposing ourselves in all our vulnerability, showing our woundedness, which makes us human, real, trustworthy. And what does this mean? A kind of heroic, courageous, yet simple belief in the truth we most personally stand for. Or to put it the other way around, a disposition to face a possible martyrdom of mediation. Sheet 10, please. Like, for example, Lina Benmeni, the Tunisian blogger girl who helped to promote the Arab Spring in 2011, or Maria Ressa, the Philippine Chief Executive Officer of Rappler, a social news network who engages in an investigative journalism, fighting the massive repressions and attempts of intimidation by the Duterte regime. In her commencement speech 2020, and the picture is right, taken from this very occasion, delivered to the students at Princeton University from her actual lockdown, her house arrest in Manila, Ressa conveyed the message of being simply immune to these attacks on free speech and human rights. She encouraged the students to form a co-immunity by collectively, quote, embracing your individual fears, never stopping to listen and learn, always avoiding the mob and implementing a strong democratic community instead. Maria Ressa concluded emphatically, Princeton class of 2020, we are in your hands. Or let's take the example of Desmond Tutu, the Anglican bishop from South Africa, who initiated the so-called Truth Commissions, spaces of reconciliation, rehabilitation, resilience, due to the mutual acknowledgement of victims and perpetrators during the times of apartheid. These encounters disclose, or to put it in our language, unlock spaces of a remembrance, a memoria passionis, in which the experience of a passion inflicted by cruelty and racial prejudices is worked through again, or maybe for the first time, mourned, and consequently transformed into a new and liberating experience of compassion. Acknowledging the right and necessity to speak out by a church which has to come to terms with its own ongoing conflicts and search for plurality, the Christian experience of communion becomes, as a living testimony to this reality, extremely relevant for today's society. Sheet 11. Sheet 11, please. It's the last one. It's the Emmaus scenery again, but there's another, right, that one. Christians are engaged in the cultural mission as, to put it with Frederick Jameson, vanishing mediators, similar to Christ in the Emmaus episode, who finally leaves the two disciples on their own, encouraged, empowered by his rereading of the present and past in the light of the coming. He leaves behind, in his very act of disappearing, realigning both to one another, making them both witnesses of their communion, their co-immunity in Christ, as a sign of hope in the world to the world, for the world. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Herbert. And we can now take the time to have sharing about our experiences, but also to ask the questions about, perhaps we can start also with direct questions about your speech. And yeah, I invite you to that the most courage one can start.
So one of my questions regarding the physical part of coronavirus situations, especially this whole concept of having to wear a mask and keeping social distance. So I recently, until a few weeks ago, I was in the US, and both there and I know I've heard in Italy, I'm not sure how it was in Germany or France, but wearing masks has now become very politicized because it's having to do with conspiracy theories where, you know, if you wear a mask, you're a liberal who just believes everything the government says now and then. Whereas apparently in Italy, first it was more the conservatives who started wearing a mask because they were more, I don't know, cautious, but then it also switched around in Italy. And so it's this whole topic of identifying an other. Oh, you're on that side if you're wearing a mask or if you're not wearing a mask. And this happens, unfortunately, among people who confess the Christian faith as well. And I'm wondering how you might see a solution for Christians who would like to be that kind of mediator, and we want to enter into conversation with each other in situations which it might come up again, because if there's a second wave, or now in the US where it's still very active, like how would it be possible for us Christians to really be a voice of dialogue in these
I think that I decided that my connection is, can you still hear me? Okay, hopefully. Yeah, you are right. It has become a very political issue, and I think a first step that we should take, or this is my proposal, or this to a certain extent my experience, is to depoliticize it and to ask for kind of a morality which is maybe more part of the political sphere, the one we maybe have a bit lost out of sight, because we are always discussing these issues. Is there any how to put it, any repression by the side of the state going on? And we are not facing that much, that there is a need to ask for a certain solidarity or a certain empathy, which has nothing to do with the political how to say, fractions. And I think that this level of feeling as a society a certain need for solidarity has vanished in a haze, and we are always discussing it on other issues. You mentioned that one before, by conspiracy theories and by our own individual citizenship rights and stuff like that. What is still to be what is still missing, as far as I can judge it, is a preemptive solidarity by not knowing how things work out, whether the mask of any good or what do they, out of sympathy and solidarity with elder people, with the people most jeopardized by the whole Corona scenario. I think this debate has got lost and instrumentalized by a deeper process, which comes much earlier than the Corona thing. The impression that the state, the actual society, is not representing my own interests. That I have to organize my own interests by little private or religious spheres, by disintegrating from the idea of a political community, unity, and so it's all. And I think our attempt should be there to foster a sensitivity. We might not know whether it's of that good to wear a mask or less, but we have the hope or the consideration that it might help people who otherwise would be put out to a very serious risk. I think our and this what I meant by saying we should not get too easily on one or the other side, but to try by this trying to stay in between, to realign with this pre-political sphere, with this sphere of solidarity, empathy, cautionary measures that has to be taken. This is something that would come to my mind regarding this mask issue.
I have a question about the Emmaus competence. So I was thinking about the body politics and where our body, our individual bodies, but as well the social body is attacked by the virus right now. And then with the Emmaus competence, we try to listen, to show our own wounds and to retell the gospel. So we try to come together on a horizontal line. Do you think there's as well the opportunity or the chance to widen the vertical line, to talk about as well the importance of the body, but in another perspective, in the perspective of the gospel, maybe?
I think this comes inevitably. I think that the horizontal or the narrative dimension has to take a stand on the verticality thing by asking the question: which hope which hope can we find by trying to come together and sharing our histories, and by sharing our biographies, and sharing the crucial moments we had in our life, our woundedness, our I don't know, and to find out by meeting other people, by sharing one of the most intimate things, the personal story, and by making the experience that we are listened to, that there is dignity and importance giving to our story. I think that there emerges a perspective of hope, the groundedness in, if I may say so, transcendental beliefs and hopes. And I think that what strikes me in the Emmaus episode is that Jesus exposes himself as the one who illuminates the past in order to find a new present with a perspective for hope. And I think this is something we should very much have in mind by rediscovering our capacity to resonate with people, to yeah, and to listen to them, to not have the first word. And I have made the experience, and I think many of Christian communities who are engaged in a missionary outreach have made the experience that people, when they feel they are listened to, they ask, but who makes you listen this way? But what is your attitude? What is your by encountering another culture of listening, of hospitality, of fearlessness, I think this changes the perspective, the sense of being isolated, lost, abandoned by this Christian or other God, or at least believing only in a God who has nothing to do with our human experience. But by encountering people who are interested in the biographies of others, new perspectives can show up. And I think it is always the question of what gives substance to your life, what is the origin you come from, and which is the hope you are longing for, is inevitably. But maybe we have to enter these cultural spheres, sharing the history of other people, listening, being receptive, in order to understand maybe what we have to answer, what we have to say, to rediscover, which is the testimony we have inside, the testimony by the gospel. So I think both dimensions are closely linked.
In this time of crisis, I think we can relate to some example in the Bible. They had a lot of time when the people were really at crisis. Joseph with the Pharaoh, when they were the lack of food, or there were a time when the entire city was destroyed, and people were always hopeless at this time. And there come some prophets to give some hope. And my question is, like, in today's world, in a secular world, what it means to be a prophet? What is the role of a Christian to share? Is it to be like the Christ with the Emmaus disciple, to be a vanishing presence, to be something really light, or should a Christian be more present? What is their role in those type of situation?
Mm-hmm. I think that this expression coined by Frederick Jameson of the vanishing mediator is a great, profound aspiration of our culture. People who are, as you put it so well in your program, agents of change, but who are not doing it in a narcissistic or a manipulative way, but who have the competence, and this is maybe the central feature when I speak of retelling the Christian story, that they have a capacity to open up pathways or connections from one perspective to the others. And I spoke of these combat zones, yeah, where you have to go, or you don't have to go, but where the Christian voice is badly needed. And where the prophecy is to show we always can negotiate the broken middle. There's always, in Christ, we have always the possibility to find that he himself is present, or to put it in a more secular term, that conciliation is possible. That maybe I'm about not to fear the other, the otherness of the other, but to find myself and in the other, and understand more profoundly who I am by this encounter with the complete other. And I think this sums up all our fears. The sum of all our fears is this anxiety, risk of, and so we have this fatal situation of a collective lockdown, and people get lost in this how to say frenziness to close themselves in echo chambers, in bubbles, in not taking the net as a possibility, the internet as a possibility to give a form to a culture of harmonious differences, of a progressive understanding that passes by the diversity of the other, who is, if I take it to my relationship with God, an aspect of God which I might still have not perceived, and that could give me a broader understanding and make me receive my own Christian identity from meeting with the others. If you look at my speech, there are many voices. Well, one can argue whether they really fit into this resonance. I all make them move themselves or listen to one another in a sphere of resonance. I think this can be done because I have this strong conviction that behind our diversities, our oppositions, our aporias, our impasses, there is this encounter with Christ, and therefore this Emmaus competence, or even this collocation by St. Paul of the one who watches over the threshold, who guarantees our differences, and by guaranteeing that we are different, he guarantees our community, our bond together. And this is a paradoxical truth which Christian life and culture and intellectuality and spirituality has always underlined, as for certain contingent reasons been dismissed. And now we are faced with a situation of a post-secular search to realign with this patrimony of Christian prophecy, Christian a prophecy that is always linked to very precarious experiences, as the prophets were always very precarious persons, standing in this combat zone, feeling that they have to fulfill a mission and feeling all their inadequacy, their incompetence. And I think we have to work on that Christian prophecy by looking at our culture and finding out the hidden traces and the strong inspirational threads still underlying our whole cultural fabric. So my interest, as I was introduced by Pater Gerold, in the post-secular age has to do with this conviction that Christ is coming towards us through all these crises and all these situations of war, of non-understanding, of antagonisms, and of ever-growing polarizations. So I think this being mediators, being people who do not care for their own business, but care for the business of the others, this is the strong antidote to what is actually happening in our culture. And this is explicitly or implicitly Christian. And I think we have to have a stronger belief in this kind of identity. Not to talk of our own life, but to listen to the lives of the others and then resonating on it and finding out that our strength maybe is not the predication, but is the receptiveness towards others that makes us then say our own specific word, because we have to testify to Christ. So it's a huge, complex project or enterprise or But for me, it's really an enthusiastic perspective. Hard, but very seducing in a positive way.
I have a question, and it has to do with the concept of co-immunity that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I would like to ask you, how would you, for example, think of a way of building a collective, of embracing our collective fear? Because you say that actually it's actually about embracing our collective fears. And for example, for the particular case of the pandemic, how could we, in such in a way, embrace those these collective fears to build up co-immunity against the situation?
Well, embracing our fears was a quotation by Maria Ressa. It was not yet my argument, but of course you're right. By living this co-immunity, we are confronted with our fears, and I described that very moment we had in our house community with living the Eucharist, and I think it is because of this brokenness or these crucial moments that we find ourselves exposed to our deepest beliefs, to our own creed, to our identification with Christ. And maybe we are now in this phase of Corona. What is our deepest fear, or at least one of my deepest fears, is the incapacity to do something about it. And so I feel that I have to be much more listening to what my inner voice, and therefore we have this Pascalian moment, which is important to foster collective identity, that makes me more sensitive to what the often subtle voice of God is telling me, giving me an indication, giving me, comforting me, and stuff like that. And I think this is something which helps me to get rid of my deepest fear. This is the fear of being, of not coming to terms with all the realities I have inside. So I think that in these Corona times, the first thing is that we learn to stay in our own house, to listen to what God tells us in this very situation, and then feeling more prepared to be sensitive for what is telling me, meeting the other person. And sometimes it's an easy business, and sometimes it's a precarious or even a dangerous thing, because you do not feel at ease with the other. You cannot calculate how he will react. But it is because you have made this recollocation of yourself that you are more courageous. And again, then you go and meet other people, and you want to do something together, but you have to accept co-immunity means that the other has his or her own authority, his or her own standing, her own ideas. And so it's a new kind of listening to one another in order to find out what can be done. But my first question my first answer to your question would be, I think that we will understand what can be done when we go on living this experience of being confronted with ourselves, with our deepest fears, and with the enemy inside. That we can get rid this psychologically and spiritually speaking very uncomfortable situation.
I wanted to ask, I guess, an open question to everyone, whether anyone can bring up some experiences either during this time of coronavirus or other crisis moments when you've either participated in or heard a testimony of an encounter where Christians have been that kind of invisible or vanishing mediator, or in that space of dialogue that has had brought a lot of fruit. I just wanted to hear about people's experiences with that.
I personally remember a strong experience of this Corona time was really a new relationship with, for me, with the internet. For me, I'm not a native speaker in the internet, and it's not my home. And it's in a certain way I have to deal with an empty space for me, or it's for example, to be in front of a camera and to be filmed with it's a form of losing a control, and but yeah, to go in this space where we have to speak out a word of life, and that's for me a main experience personally, a main experience of this Corona times, that to have the courage to be really present in the internet with the word we can give, and yeah, to start perhaps. I don't know.
For me also, it's I had the chance of being part of groups. We are really aware of some people could be isolated during this time of lockdown, and in our group we created a time just to gather, just via Zoom or other means, just for people who are alone. I was not, but some others were, not to feel too much this isolation. And I think this idea of being aware that some people could experience pain or experience some difficult situation is part of the Christian empathy, and for me it was also really refilling to have these times. Even if I was not alone, I couldn't meet as many people as I would have liked, and it was really nice to feel gathered, and even from different countries. So we had a prayer group that were like a bit finished because everyone moved. But during this time, it was the occasion of creating it again and just reliving it again. So I think this idea of creating unity and not letting people alone. I know I also about like an initiative of some people who like bring food to either disabled people or people, or even for the nurses in France to help them in the situation of lockdown. So it was a physical help using like websites or app to gather people. Just people were signing up and say, I will do that today and this day. And this type of initiative has been shared to me, and I think using like the Christian network and then gather more people to help in your life, people that are isolated and couldn't buy food or anything. So yeah, it's a good question, and yeah, I had the chance to experience some of them.
I would like to come back to the experience I mentioned before, the experience with the Eucharist. That I described the situation that Corona makes it impossible to have our communion in the ordinary way, if I may say it this way. And collective pain, or this empathy we developed there, brought us in a deeper understanding of what the Eucharist is all about, of what our community is all about, of what the gospel is all about. So we discovered that we maybe sometimes, and this was resonating in the words of Pope Paul to this Roman parish, we are exercising a Christian existence based on rather traditional, or how to say, pious practices. And the question is, independently from Corona, but more accentuated by Corona, how do you live this spirit of communion? How do you connect when you have to lock down? When you finally manage, and this is a happy time, to reconcile the red and the white, to hate in a salutary way, to hate the pink, to quote here Chesterton. So it helps us to be more completely embodying, incarnating our faith, and seeing that the Eucharist helps us to understand, even because of its brokenness, what the foundation of all sacramentality is all about, the physical presence of Christ, the Christ who is asking us, donnez-moi encore, in order so that we can go out and give in many ways. It depends on the situation. Corona has its own ways. Other people, this real presence, this physical identity, which helps them to live a life of the Spirit, and which helps them to get back to the incarnational truth, that is Jesus Christ. It's the only point, and so I think it's a kairos to show that the Christian belief goes in this deep wound of the culture. We want, as human beings, participate in the life of God. And the Christian belief says you can. You don't have to let apart certain things, be just spiritual or be a pious person. You can live with your own physicality. Maybe this is a bit a bulky word, but anyway, let's take it for provisional reasons. And this is what my passion for this living my faith in Corona times has ignited. And seeing the Pope there, lonesome on St. Peter's Square, and understanding that at the same time something is happening. The body of Christ is articulating itself in many forms, and the Pope has never been shepherd as in this moment, presiding over an empty, abandoned space in this. It seemed to me like a post-apocalyptic scenery, staying there, but he was presiding or giving a face, a person, a symbol to that church that was about to be reborn. There was Romano Guardini who once spoke of the awakening of the church in the hearts and the minds. Now we have the awakening of the church in the many houses, and in the manifolded desire and aspirations of so many people to be in touch with a real presence that could help them to be real persons, to realize their own human potential and their human capacities. I think this is something that comes to my mind when thinking about these chances and these particular experiences we are called to make in these Corona times.
It would mean that the isolation, the lockdown as isolation experience revealed all the personal lockdowns or social lockdowns all over the world as all the isolation phenomena. the example from Paul with the old persons. Indeed, in Europe, they are living their lockdown without in the common life, and there's no. And now during the crisis, in a way never known, the society discovered, okay, in this in our demographic situation we have a thought of communion, and then to the lockdown as a possibility to choose communion with those who were locked down just already before.
Mm-hmm.
Other experiences, perhaps, or echoes, questions, examples?
Something came to mind, an experience during lockdown with my family where, you know, we hadn't, the five of us, my two sisters and I, and our parents have never, or it's been a long time since we were all together. And so, of course, these family tensions can come up over time. And one of one of these tensions was just like not being able to necessarily share my prayer life with my family. And so for a long time, I was just stuck in my world of how should I reconcile this? But then I had this idea of suggesting to my sister, well, let's read the gospel together every night and talk about it. And it was very simple. Yeah. And instead of this resonated very much what you said. Instead of me preaching at her or anything, I was listening. And in that process of her speaking and sharing, I grew, I learned about myself, I learned about her. And it was this beautiful encounter, even though we only started at the very end where I left, but it's still a sign that these kinds of things are worth doing, and it's beautiful and it can continue in the future.
Yeah. By living so, we come back to the basics, to some of the basics we have lost. A new poverty, a new way of humbleness, of being grateful for what is still possible, or a new longing to meet other people, and a new creativity, a new disposition towards those who are the desaparecidos of our society, the nurses, the medical personnel and stuff like that. No, it's not just by applauding them, but it's a kind of a reversal of our social hierarchies and the way to think. What gives meaning to what is a prestige in the real sense of the word? No, we have to undo by Corona these hierarchies, which are futile things, and we live in a frivolous age, and this frivolous age made us aware of how poor we are, of how jeopardized for many aspects we are by this new threat we couldn't even collocate. We just felt we were entering a new phase of living our human life, of thinking about the human condition. And many important questions were asked, because people made the experience it can change, and it probably will change forever. Though there is in many people there is this kind of intuition, there will be no back to normalcy. There will be a return to something that we do not know, and this is scary and inspiring. And I think that Christians have this, how to say, they have this genetic code of being courageous. because they have this alignment with Jesus and they have his example. And he always told them, being one of my disciples is a risky job. And we have forgotten that a bit, for no bad reason, but because many of us were not under fire, and now we feel that things do constantly from within. That's the nasty thing. From within, they do change, and it's unheimlich. It's uncanny, but in the light of the gospel, we feel there are many spirits out there. We have to identify, and by identifying them, by addressing them, exorcising them, and being prophets of this incarnated personal love of Jesus. And I think this is something we should practice more. And it starts with reading the gospel with your sister, maybe.
So you were talking about new creativity and as well for this longing for relationship as well. So maybe one experience I can share is that I think for myself there was a growth in solidarity and empathy for the worldwide population, because I was able to, for example, celebrate a mass in the US, which was not possible before, but still there was not. I was not taken out of my local community because there was this, this strong longing for real relationship, for this resonance between the others, between me and the others. So that was very important for me to see that we are all together in this same situation, but still we can live this particular in our own communities locally.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think when I heard your speech, an old concept from my church, from the Reformed Church, came up in my mind, and this is the priesthood of all believers. I think what you said, and also the situation of the global pandemic, is also a chance to discover this this gift that the Reformation was new to. This concept to empower each one of us to be a tool of God, to directly work, and to give fruits from their faith. As you said, it was co-immunity.
Inspiring. Yeah.
That the church is each one of us, as you discovered it,
Exactly.
And also each one of us, I think it's really a call for Christians.
Yeah. I'm very thankful for your intervention, because this shows another side of the whole thing, that there is a stronger awareness of our ecumenical bonds due to this pandemic. And maybe we could refer to the whole thing in this sense, speak of a metaphysic or pandemic that really touches us from the ground as Christians, and make us aware of what we are called forth to testify to. And it has much to do, if not all, and everything has to do with this common call as to common priesthood, and to a redefinition of church, big church, the monuments and the empty monuments with their traditional richness, but empty, and a case for tourists. And to live this kind of exodus. Lockdown could even be an exodus by moving away from the big places of theocracy, where the ecclesial power, the political power call forth the masses, and by this concept of the ecclesiole, which is by the way a very cozy way of putting it by John Paul II. The ecclesiole, something very precious, very, very cute, but it is even the more it is a new way of testifying to the message, the secular message of Christian life, that we are called to the fullness of being, that we are people who like to take a risk, who have a determination, who have a mission in life, and who have a great heart for all those who have no voice, who have no one to speak for them, but doing it because not we are good persons, but because we love the red and the white, we love the flowers, we love the variety, we love, and sometimes we are a bit in this kitschy edge of pink, you know, and it's a caricature by what Christian life is all about. And Corona, I think, gave us the possibility, with all its tragic aspects that have not to be neglected, to have a new outcome of what this church, in its dispersal, in its diversity, in its impossibility of gathering, is all about. And people are longing to touch the body of Christ. Could go on for hours with this point, but won't do it, I promise.
I have a question about this idea of returning to normalcy, particularly because even though this coronavirus crisis is much more in our face, we have been in an ecological, social crisis for decades now, you know, and with Laudato Si and with a lot of different things, the church has been kind of calling itself or each other and the world to wake up. And there are many people, I think, who even with the coronavirus would like to go back to whatever was normal before, even though we recognize on personal or social levels that a lot of what was and is normal in the past has caused these crises of ecological disaster and the coronavirus itself. So I'm wondering how you think it might be useful to go about reminding people that actually going back to normal is not just not desirable, but also not possible, and vice versa.
I think in a way things will renormalize, I guess. I'm not sure, but what is of a crucial importance is that we become more aware of the prophecies to be lived out. And these prophecies have been articulated long before you mentioned Laudato Si. A more sensitive, a more humble, a more respectful way of treating our environment, of understanding ourselves as creatures within creation. And I think maybe we will be looking back on the Corona experience. And to be honest, I think I'm not sure. I have my doubts. Don't know how to put it. That this, because of the things we talked over for some minutes ago, that people are politicizing everything and they feel repressed and stuff like that, and they lose out of sight the most important lessons to be learned. And the most important lessons to be learned is to become newly aware of our ecology. And I think it was the French scientist Bruno Latour, who is coming from completely other systems and convictions, said that we have to head on for Nouvelle Alliance. We have to find a new culture of coalitions, and I think Christians have to fostering these new alliances of people who say we can't go on this way. We are hearing the Club of Rome in the 70s, the limits of growth. Now we are in a post-growth era. We have for each and everything we have the nice fitting word, but we have this schizophrenia between knowing and doing. We know it is no good, but I do not matter. And maybe it's not that only that Black lives matter, but that each and every life matters among humans, in nature, in our world. And so I hope that Christians could go in order to foster these alliances, to help people to stick on to their dreams and remain in a healthy way, utopians in a healthy way, not in a dreamy, frenzy manner. Yeah, I think there was one Marxist philosopher in Germany, Ernst Bloch, who was a Marxist, and this is a very, very German thing. Ernst Bloch, he was Marxist and he was Christian. So it's a very original. And he said, what we as Marxists and Christians must testify to is the principle of hope. And I think we are you mentioned agents of change. I think we should be agents of hope. And this means even if we go back to whatever kind of normalcy, we should be aware that we should work for the prophecies still to be taken seriously. And among these prophecies, we have Laudato Si. I joined in a commission between Christians and Marxists, and the common base was, let's do a rereading, a close reading, a pragmatic reading of Laudato Si. And the Marxists said, they were from the European left, so a post-Stalinist, of course, they said, maybe the ecological issue and the respect for nature, the question of social justice, of who is to dominate the earth, are important issues that could bring us together by stepping far beyond our ideological or theological claims. And there's something of this Nouvelle Alliance that starts to move on, or even Christians have to, there are some of them who should help Fridays for Future to not abandon themselves to poor scientism, but to develop an ecological, if you will, even spiritual vision of what they are rightly trying to do. And I think we as a movement, as a worldwide movement, try to get in contact to foster these encounters by learning from one another, but by acknowledging that we have the same common passion and aspiration to go back to normalcy in order to work out for the prophecies that are left over and will be, hopefully, always there to work for.
Thank you very much. Lockdown, connect. Yeah, that's what it is. They connect and speak out.
Yes.
And with this invitation to be testimonies of the hope, I think also I heard a lot about love also, to choice concretely the charity, to love the humanity.
Of course, yes.
And yeah, and that's possible because we have faith we have faith. Yeah, that God is the Lord of our world, and He sent us Jesus. Thank you very much.
And we have this bond of friendship between Chemin Neuf, Focolare, and other people from all over the world. And this is personally a reason to be hopeful.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
We have to stop, but really thank you very much to accept our invitation and for this encouraging and hopeful reflection.
Thanks for having me.
We went deep in the sense and the meaning of Christian life in the fellowship of Jesus, serving the world today. Thank you very much all together, all those who were ready to join us for this time of reflection. And we hope that you all over the world, it was a moment of hope for you to join our reflection. Our next meeting point all together will be at 7 p.m. for the prayer for unity, and it's a good joining moment, which will be transmitted from the Hautecombe Abbey in France. God bless you all, and also thank you to our translators for their hard work. God bless you all, and see us later for the prayer for unity and then the worship evening.